and live up to the volunteer motto. Second in Oriente, Nulli Secundes in Oriente.
And with those echoing words, the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Kestrel Simpson, marked the passing of the Royal Hong Kong Regiment, the Volunteers. The disbandment parade took place at Gallipoli Lines on September the 2nd, 1995. It was, as Colonel Simpson remarked, an occasion of great pride in having completed a job well done, and an occasion of great sadness that we would not be able to continue to serve the community of Hong Kong. The parade was the climax to the regiment's disbandment camp, which began on the 26th of August and coincided with the events to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Hong Kong's liberation from Japanese rule at the end of the Second World War. Members of the regiment could take some comfort, though, from the knowledge that a vivid record of its history is to be preserved. At this ceremony, on August the 24th, the regimental museum collection was handed over to the safekeeping of the Urban Council for eventual display at the new Liu Moon Museum. So evidence of our proud 141 years of service, broken only for 2 short periods in the last century, will be maintained for posterity. Four days later, on a blustery Monday morning, a guard of volunteers took its place for the last time at the Liberation Day parade, held in this 50th anniversary year at the Cenotaph. It stood guard during the 2-minute silence, and as His Excellency the Governor and Commander-in-Chief, the Right Honourable Christopher Patten, stepped forward to lay a wreath. The anniversary of liberation, coinciding as it did with the final days of the Royal Hong Kong Regiment, was a potent reminder of the volunteers' severest test, when 289 gave their lives in the fierce fighting against the Japanese in December 1941, or in the years of brutal captivity which followed. War veterans, including former members of the regiment, had gathered from overseas and from within Hong Kong for the ceremony. For many of them, there was also the chance to revisit the battlefield, including Wong Ni Chung Gap, scene of one of the most gallant actions. Also that week, serving members of the regiment and the Hong Kong Military Service Corps laid on a tattoo and beating retreat in honor of the veterans on Stonecutters Island. The guests were treated to a traditional dragon dance, staged jointly by Junior Leaders Corps and the HKMSC, Next, the volunteers took their appreciative audience through a dramatized history of the regiment, going back to our roots in 1854. This sequence featured the original 99, the men who came forward when the British military presence in Hong Kong was reduced because of the Crimean War. Here, they see off some of the pirates who plagued the South China Sea at the time. Mechanization was taking place during the interwar years, and in 1933 the volunteers received their first armoured car. The Ford chassis was fitted with an armour-plated body and mountings for 2 machine guns. Even so, in those days, as our drama demonstrated, the technology was still relatively primitive. The remainder of the programme portrayed the battle for Hong Kong and the dogged defence by the 2,200 mobilized volunteer officers and men. The Japanese surrender in 1945. More recent activities, such as deployment on anti-illegal immigration duties, and the capabilities of assault. After a motorcycle display by 29 Transport Squadron of the Logistics Support Regiment, the climax of the evening came with the beating retreat by the Minden Band of the Queen's Division. Despite the week's heavy emphasis on ceremonial, disbandment camp included a final period of military training. Notably, the 1995 annual personal weapons test, basic fitness test, and first aid test. The shooting, in particular, went on pretty well right until the last minute, the final round being fired down Sanwai Range late on the afternoon of 1st September. But it was also a time for reflection for many members of the regiment, like Sergeant Major Un Shuk Yi, who joined in 1984.
During that time, I'm very young and keen and fit. I enjoy those new trainings that I'm not able to get in outside training, just like foot drills, radio signals, and also the firing practices, and also those disciplinary lives that I enjoy very much with my comrades.
And like her comrades, Sergeant Major Ng was keen to stress the great benefits that belonging to the regiment had brought.
I learned most techniques that I never had or how to acquire it in normal daily life, because when I get to the post or rank of the Lance Corporal, I'm going to different role that is different kind of challenging. I'm going to lead those new troopers and also train up new recruits in the training squadron.
Finally, the 2nd of September was upon us, and the regiment moved down to the Wan Chai Stadium for the disbandment march past. A highly emotional occasion was approaching, but morale remained extremely buoyant, and some soldiers were still determined to let off steam. As the CO looked on with a quizzical eye. The march past was our public farewell to the people of Hong Kong. The salute was taken by the Chief Secretary, Mrs. Anson Chan, and General Sir Michael Rose, the Adjutant General, outside the Hong Kong Exhibition Centre. Led by the CO and the Guidon, with its escort, some 600 serving soldiers marched down Convention Avenue and Harbour Road with the Minden Band. The old comrades brought up the rear, marching to the regimental band. And So it was swiftly back to Gallipoli lines for the evening disbandment parade. A crisp, silent drill display by J-Corps raised the curtain, with Major General Brian Dutton, Commander British Forces, acknowledging the salute. Then the pipes and drums of the Royal Hong Kong Auxiliary Police performed with precision. Before it was time for the Regimental Sergeant Major, Warrant Officer 1 Clive Pearce, to march the regiment on. The second in command handed over to the commanding officer, reporting that there were 43 officers and 583 other ranks on parade. And then the guidon was marched on, borne proudly by the guidon warrant officer, Sergeant Major Lai Ho Tong, with the guidon escort under the command of the senior warrant officer, Warrant Officer 1, Cheng Kin Moon. The arrival of the governor was the cue for the first royal salute.
Brave! Royal salute! Present! Up!
Mr. Patton then inspected the regiment. And the guidon was trooped. After the advance in review order, the guidon was laid up for safekeeping in the Volunteers Association at the drumhead service. The service was conducted by the Reverend Derek Heaver, Senior Chaplain, British Forces Hong Kong, in the presence of Father Roman Carter, Catholic Chaplain, Dr. Cho Man King, General Secretary of the Hong Kong Christian Council, and the Venerable Guo Lut of the Buddhist Association.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, we do now bless and set aside this edict of the Royal Hong Kong Regiment, the Volunteers, to be laid up in the Royal Hong Kong Regiment, the Volunteers Association. Amen.
O Lord, who rulest over all things, accept, we beseech thee, that which we have blessed in thy name. Let thy gracious favor rest on those who have followed this edict. Give them courage, and may their courage ever rest on their sure confidence in thee, that they fail not finally to obtain an entrance into thy heavenly kingdom, through the merits of thy blessed Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The hymn, The Day Thou Gavest, Lord, is ended.
Praise! Praise!
It was then the turn of the governor to pay tribute to the volunteers, past and present.
The Royal Hong Kong Regiment, the volunteers, passes away. But the memory will live with each of you who have served. And the memory will live for as long as there are men and women who take pride in the history of this city.
And, he added, he hoped the spirit of service and commitment exemplified by the regiment would not be lost.
You will march off this parade ground tonight. But your record and your service and your dedication are written indelibly on the pages of the history of Hong Kong.
Praise!
so we commenced the last march-off. The regiment first, less the guidon and the 99. Then came the old comrades. Finally, the 99. suddenly it was finished. The regiment had maintained its morale and cohesion to the very end. Tension and emotion could now be released. We'll leave the last word to Colonel Solomon Bard, former honorary colonel and a medical officer during the battle for Hong Kong.
I think it was really wonderfully well done. Obviously a very sad occasion for many of us who served with the regiment for many years. It's sad, and at the same time it's a day of pride. And we really feel that as members of the regiment, particularly the veterans who went through the war and imprisonment, fought very hard, that we've contributed something to Hong Kong. And to be now honored and described as almost like heroes, it meant a great deal to us.
The Royal Hong Kong Regiment, the volunteers, passes away. But the memory will live with each of you who have served. And the memory will live for as long as there are men and women who take pride in the history of this city.
For the volunteers who faced the Japanese during the invasion of Hong Kong, this last gathering of the regiment proved to be an emotional occasion. Some veterans returned to their old battlegrounds for the first time since the war, and memories came flooding back. Malcolm Swan was just 18 years old and working as a probationer clerk in the Hong Kong Civil Service when he took his stand as a gunner against the Japanese. On Christmas Eve 1941, he was on this wooded path at Stanley, fighting alongside fellow volunteers and a company of Middlesex, a machine gun battalion.
The Japanese, as I say, came up the bank, put a flamethrower through this bungalow, and caused an awful lot of casualties. People who were hit by the flamethrower trying to run out. The only exit was towards the Japanese, and they were bayoneted.
After fierce fighting, the line of defense was pushed back. On Christmas morning, Japanese troops stormed the nearby emergency hospital set up in St. Stephen's College. A massacre ensued. Sometime after the war, Mr. Swan met a survivor of this atrocity.
I met a man after the war who was in his bed, and a Japanese sat down and talked to him and gave him a cigarette, while all round people were being bayoneted. And there was a man in traction, and they were having great fun tightening the traction before they killed him.
He lies buried in Stanley Cemetery. Mr. Swan learnt of his brother's death while interned in North Point prisoner of war camp.
A Canadian came up to me and asked if I was related to Company Sergeant Major Swan. I said, yes, he's my brother. And he told me that he was dead, and that he knew he was dead because he'd buried him.
Mr. Mr. Swan saw out the war as a POW in Japan. The only Japanese words he remembers are those which signal the end of the ordeal.
One night we were packing ready for an air raid. Nobody gave us any information. And the quartermaster came in, the Japanese quartermaster, who was drunk on our money. He robbed us. And he said, "What are you packing for?" And we said, "It might be an air raid in case the B-29s come." And he said, "Oh, no more air raids, no more war." And those lovely words, "Senso awari," which is the only Japanese I can remember, which is the war is over. And we were free men.
For Nick Jaffa, the events of the 18th of December 1941 are etched clear in his memory. On that night, as a member of No. 3 Machine Gun Company, he was defending a pathway on Jardine's Lookout. Suddenly, he came face to face with the enemy. Armed with a Thompson machine gun, he succeeded in warding off the attackers. But later, when he decided to head back to base, he found himself in a tricky situation.
I went down the path and I ran smack into a bunch of Japanese coming up. So I said, "Oh, hell." I turned around and ran the other way, back where I came from. And there I met another bunch. And they saw me and they started firing. And I could see the traces over my head, high up. Then only thing I could do is run up the hill. And I ran up and I got over our barbed wire fence, which was about 6 feet tall. How I did it, I don't know. But I got over and I was on the other side, and there wasn't a scratch on me.
41 men of his company of 115 were killed in the onslaught. Mr. Jaffa spent 44 months as a prisoner of war in Sham Shui Po. Meeting up again with old comrades has brought him mixed feelings.
Very glad to see all the old friends, and very sad to see so few of us left. But we are thankful that we are alive.
As I say in the beginning,
Volunteer Major George Roy Lance was manning a roadblock on Wong Nei Chungap Road on the 18th of December 1941. He recalls the sight that met his eyes as morning broke on the 19th.
in the morning, round about, I would say 7-ish, there was mist rising, and you couldn't see anything. Then later on, say about 8 or 9 o'clock, the sun shone and dispersed the mist, and you could see Japanese on the hill, on this path, and some running up the hill. First 2 or 3 times I came up, it did bring memories, because so many people I'd known, so much younger than myself, had been killed.
The war veterans hold pride of place in the volunteers, but their brave legacy has been taken up in the years of peace by all volunteers who have served with the regiment. At a military tattoo to mark their years of service in Hong Kong, the volunteers acted out scenes depicting their involvement in vivid chapters of the territory's past. It was in 1854 that the government put out a call for volunteers to defend Hong Kong Island, which was vulnerable to attack as a result of the temporary withdrawal of British naval forces during the Crimean War. Apart from the threat posed by pirates, there was also the danger of a breakdown in public order. The 99 men who answered the call to be citizen soldiers set in motion the fine tradition of the volunteers. In post-war years, the regiment has played a key role in maintaining internal security. Commanding officer Colonel Kestrel Simpson recalls the role of the regiment during the 1967 riots.
That was a desperate moment in Hong Kong's history there, when really the territory was teetering on chaos and total lack of stability. It was all hands to the pumps as far as the government were concerned and the British Army, and there the volunteers were mobilised for quite a considerable number of months and made a significant contribution. Of course, there were a large number of British Army here, and the police were nothing like the strength that they are now. And the one thing you really want in an internal security situation such as that is a security force who can identify with the population, the dissatisfied population. Firstly, so they can help to bring some confidence to the local population, and secondly, and probably most importantly, so that the local population can communicate with the security forces themselves.
In part 2, we'll continue with this last salute to the Royal Hong Kong Regiment, the volunteers.
Operation Midwife was the government operation to cope with a huge influx of Vietnamese refugees who came to Hong Kong. They came in such numbers that they literally swamped the authorities here in Hong Kong, the correctional services and the police. There were simply too many for the authorities to handle. What they really needed was, what the government needed was more manpower to look after these refugees while arrangements were made for their return. There were a number of camps that were opened up in and around Hong Kong, and there was one particular one at Ap Lak Chau, the island in the Lama Channel, and that housed 5,000 Vietnamese refugees, which was entirely our responsibility for about a 5-month period.
In recent years, one of the major tasks undertaken by the volunteers has been assisting the British forces and latterly the police in manning the border. Captain Philip Chan, who joined the regiment in 1969, has never forgotten one encounter he had with an elderly illegal immigrant from China.
We caught one very elderly II, a male II, who was almost 70 years of age. And when we caught him, he was with torn clothing, starving, and eventually he kneeled down and begged us for mercy to release him, because he was saying that he got his grandsons and families living in Sha Tin area and asked us if he could release them. I then explained to him, even though that he was shed into tears, and said, I cannot, we have to carry out our duty, we have to carry out our orders, being tasked to catch any IIs and then hand them back to the police. It was quite difficult myself at that particular moment. If never before that such an elderly man kneel down right in front of you and burst into tears and begging for mercy. I never expect that sort of things happen to me during the II operations.
Captain Patricia Crichton, who in 1983 founded the women's troop of the volunteers, also felt very moved by the plight of some of the illegal immigrants.
Well, it was often very tragic because a lot of the women that we came across, and of course women actually only make up a very small part of the illegal immigrants that we catch. A lot of these women were 45, 50 years old. They were very simply dressed. They might have 2 or 3 cotton shirts on and a couple of pairs of trousers, and it might be the middle of winter. Often they'd be wet, they'd be hungry, they would have travelled for days, they were frightened. And I thought it was heartrending to see them. They would have, a lot of them would have come because the harvest was poor in their county, and they felt that if by coming they might be able to better themselves by just working for a few months and going back. At that age, they didn't really intend to stay, I don't think. I think they just wanted to work for a few months, get some money behind them and go back to help their families again.
Captain Crichton feels honoured to have served with the regiment.
In setting up Women's Troop, I almost started my own army, if you like, which was a wonderful experience. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house after the disbandment parade. In fact, I think the rehearsal was almost worse than the parade. And it's really the end of a big part of people's lives. I was privileged to be part of this.
Captain Albert Lamb served as the regiment's last adjutant. He recalls the atmosphere at the disbandment parade.
I can see there are 1 or 2 old volunteers, almost in tears. I can feel many volunteers very sad to see the Gidon march off for the last time.
This particular week has been a very, very difficult week for every one of us, knowing that by the end of the week we will be disbanded and we have to hand in all our uniforms and everything back to the quartermaster, and then we will walk out from the camp in civilian clothing. So psychologically, it is very, very difficult to explain in how we feel. It's simply very difficult, very difficult.
Though the regiment has been disbanded, its unique traditions of civic service and action will be perpetuated by the Junior Leaders Corps.
I am absolutely delighted to say that the Junior Leaders Corps, the young youth development program that we have run so successfully since 1971, is to continue.
Up to 1,000 young men and women will continue to serve in the future Hong Kong Adventure Corps. Distinguished veteran Captain Carlos Pintos started the Junior Leaders Squadron in 1969. He reflects on his 42 years and 6 months service with the volunteers.
It is a very, very enjoyable period. You make a lot of friends, you learn a lot of things, and you also serve the community, especially during the trouble time we had in Hong Kong.
As the volunteers march into the pages of Hong Kong's history, they can be sure that their deeds will not be forgotten.
You will march off this parade ground tonight. But your record and your service and your dedication are written indelibly on the pages of the history of Hong Kong.
舒服咯，好唔捨得，有少少唔捨得，但係都冇辦法。
其實呢一刻咧，即係好唔捨得，
覺得好傷感下㗎。
上星期六係皇家香港義勇軍團最後一次步操表演，本來仲係陽光普照，唔知點解忽然之間落起雨嚟，令到唔少在場嘅人原本已經沉重嘅心情加添一份傷感。
對於有差不多34年義勇軍生涯嘅梁 Sir 嚟講咧，佢嘅感受都比任何人咧更加強烈嘅。由當日做步兵慢慢升至到今時今日嘅少校崗位，梁 Sir 喺當日嘅表現咧，唔係預期咁激動，反而咧係好平靜喎。
我哋喺琴晚亦都再做一個所謂最後嗰個 rehearsal 咧，咁之後咧，即係大家幾個老友都係話好沉重，大家講當年過咗今晚、聽晚之後咧，我哋都唔知會唔會再有咁大家咁坐埋傾啊？大家即係嗌完交又冇咩嘢咁啊，又話辛苦第次唔嚟咁又嚟翻啊咁樣。呢句説話我都唔知可唔可以再講啦。咁即係大家都有咁嘅心情喺度。時間越嚟越短，即係話1分鐘1分鐘，我哋都睇住個鐘，希望咧即係話可以停留到咧就最好停留。
喺呢一刻，每一個義勇軍最希望嘅係時間可以過得慢啲。既然解散係一個唔可以改變嘅事實，所以佢哋喺3個月前已經籌備今次嘅步操。每一個人都比平日更加專心、更加投入去做埋呢一次最後嘅表演，甚至乎連一班已經退咗伍，又或者已經移民外地嘅老一輩義勇軍，都專程返香港參加最後一次嘅步操。大家都希望可以喺呢個特別嘅日子留下美好嘅回憶。
而家香港軍團咧，由成立到而家已經有141年歷史㗎啦。咁喺咁多年裏邊，佢哋見證過同埋參與過唔少香港嘅事務，例如1967年嘅暴動。近年嚟咧就更加有協助邊防打擊非法入境者同埋看守船民嘅工作。
今日之後，義勇軍將會變成一個過去嘅名詞，所以好多人嚟觀禮之後，都會喺軍營裏邊把握最後機會買翻一啲紀念品。
都係我第一次入嚟，亦都係last一次啦。最後一次啦，咁俾你有啲咩嘅感覺啦？有啲可惜咯，嚇。咁咪幫佢做翻個 video 咯，自己私人記錄、私人收藏咯。已經係決定咗解散啊嘛，所以我諗今次我相信啲飛啊各方面都有紀念價值。
嗱喺軍營入邊咧，好多人都會將自己套制服燙得整整齊齊啦。咁有啲啊更加將自己對軍靴咧擦到立立令，務求咧要用最好嘅狀態出席最後一次檢閱。
對於呢一班義勇軍嚟講，當晚嘅9點鐘可以話係一個歷史性嘅時刻。當港督檢閱完畢，當呢一支代表英國皇室嘅旗幟離開會場之後，義勇軍終於正式解散。
嗱，呢一刻啦，真係完啦，個心情點樣咧？
我諗好多嘢都好難忘啦，同埋始終都有啲唔捨得啦。
見到好多兄弟都即係眼濕濕，好似想喊咁樣，即係覺得好可惜。不過冇辦法啦。一個結束咧，亦都係另一個新嘅開始啦。我相信。
呢位義勇軍講得好啱啊！雖然義勇軍已經解散咗啊，但係義勇軍嘅團結同埋合作精神呢，一定會永遠存在喺佢哋每一個人嘅心入邊。
157年嘅殖民歷史裏邊，咁除咗正規嘅英國軍隊肩負起保護香港嘅責任，咁仲有一隊默默咁守衛住香港嘅隊伍，佢哋就係義勇軍。
由於97將至，呢一隊為數近1000人嘅隊伍，將會喺今年嘅9月正式解散，結束141年嘅光榮歲月。
喺1854年嘅時候，由於克里米亞戰爭啦，咁喺香港駐軍嘅英軍呢係人數減少咗好多。咁但係因為嗰陣時候係海盜為患，咁為咗鞏固翻我哋兵防面嘅實力啦，咁所以就召集咗一批志願嘅人士，咁就成立咗義勇軍。
義勇軍係由一支志願人士兼職組成嘅隊伍，咁正式名稱係皇家香港軍團。嗱，軍團一共有6個唔同嘅連隊，以及少年領袖隊同埋軍樂隊。
自從1854年成立之後咧，義勇軍曾經多次重組。喺第一次世界大戰期間咧，義勇軍更加係當時唯一嘅軍事單位，肩負保衛香港嘅責任。
到咗淪陷時期，日軍大舉由深圳南下，義勇軍呢就總動員抗日。當時參軍人數有2200人，咁其中有300人傷亡嘅。
重光之後，義勇軍嘅工作就轉為內部保安。嗱，好似喺67年嘅暴動同埋79年嘅難民潮咁啊，義勇軍都有出動維持治安嘅。
喺義勇軍141年嘅歷史裏面咧，出過唔少嘅英勇軍人嘅喎，而現役嘅軍人咧，亦都好卓越嘅表現。其中一位嘅軍齡啊，仲有34年咁耐添喎。
唔少年青人都渴望過軍人生活，認為咁樣先至男子漢大丈夫，梁少校都唔例外。
佢從軍34年，係目前義勇軍裏邊軍齡最長嘅軍官。
阿 Sir， 你加入咗義勇軍幾耐啊？
不經不覺咧都34年啦，差唔多。
咁你點解會加入義勇軍呢？
我相信咧，我當時咧，我不嬲都係而家都係一樣就係話都好中意軍人嘅生活啦。咁啊，同埋當時咧都係想燒槍啊咁樣，咁所以嗰陣時咧就決定咗選擇參加呢個義勇軍。
義勇軍自成立以嚟一直都係全男班，咁直至1983年先至接受女隊員加入。嗱，而劉宗士就係當時第一批嘅女隊員啦。
咁點解你要加入義勇軍呢？
因為嗰年係第一屆係有女兵咯，咁想試下自己得唔得？咁即係之後即係發覺自己原來可以嘅，咁咪參加到而家咯。
義勇軍喺9月3號咧就會正式光榮解散。為咗隆重其事咧，軍團安排咗一連串嘅活動，而9月2號咧就會喺灣仔嘅大型軍操，將整個活動咧推至高潮啦。
今次軍操嘅場面盛大，係歷年之冠，不過係最後一次，所以唔少嘅成員都表現得異常傷感。
34年咧就係話，當然係有一個感情喺度。就好似你一個好嘅朋友或者一個中意嘅人啦，咁就係話要離開，咁當然係有個感觸。
因為喺呢個部隊裏邊，我學到好多唔同方面嘅嘢啦，亦都見識到好多嘢啦，同埋最重要係團隊裏邊，我哋每一個成員都好團結咯，咁所以比較係唔捨得啦。
義勇軍解散之後，有關義勇軍珍貴嘅舊相片同埋冇用嘅軍械，都會交俾香港博物館處理㗎。
喺9月3號，義勇軍軍旗就係最後一次懸掛喺港督府。到咗午夜12點，軍旗就會徐徐落下。
隨住呢曲安息號樂聲嘅消逝，義勇軍亦都正式結束佢光榮嘅歲月。